So things are finally coming together with the Plan Z Dart. Spent the last couple of few days going through the actual roller itself, taking care of a few odds and ends, and refining some things that I needed to do before. Nothing of any consequence, just that little detail work, you know. Finally got everything clean and painted under the hood. I wanted to get rid of that scoop. I had a small little scoop on this thing, but because I want to try several different things as far as intakes go and whatnot, the scoop really wasn't going to work. So I wanted to take it off. I welded a patch in there, and I went way over my head as far as my metalworking skill goes. And this thing is foo-barred. It's like the ocean, okay? I tried to shrink it, tried to work with it, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse. So we gotta find another hood for it. That's why it's painted flat black. But everything else under the hood is all glossy white and ready to go. It's pretty in there. So, and it's just the right home for our Slant, which we finished 2 weeks ago. So it's just sitting here ready to go. It's literally, the distributor's dropped in it. It's timed, it's phased, it's ready, so that it should start, boom, first click of the key. First bump of the switch. There's no key in the car. Last week, John Wilburn, our buddy and super mod, if you watch our Sunday night shows, he dropped off the 904 that he built for it. So this is all ready to go, ready to drop on the car. And then finally yesterday, I ran down to Mississippi to TCI, and I picked up the last big piece of the puzzle, our torque converter. So this is the critical thing. So let me give you the history on the car and explain how we ended up with this. We originally built this car about 5 years ago, and I had basically a mild motor, small cam, this intake and whatnot, and these headers in it with 904. And it was off the line, right? It was drastically slow. And I mean like slow that you could clock the 60 foot on this thing with the erosion of rocks. You know what I'm saying? That was like, you can get out, flat punch it, get out and just walk alongside of it. Once the motor got up around 3,000, 3,500 RPM, she'd go, she'd move. So my solution to that, remember this was a budget build. At the time, we had approximately $850 total in the entire build of the car. So we had a running, driving car, $850. And to get a converter that was going to work with this combination was going to cost us probably twice what we went into the car for. So my solution was to convert it to a stick. Now, why would it cost so much for a converter for this car? And this is something you have to be aware of if you're building an unorthodox combination like we've built with this. When you go to the catalog to buy a torque converter, so let's say you're going to buy a converter that's rated at 3,500 RPM. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get exactly 3,500 RPM out of it. That's a ballpark rating on the converter. And the ballpark is based on a typical setup, meaning, let's say, a 400 horsepower or so engine, a 3,500 pound or so car, a mid-range gear, let's say a 350 to 410 gear. All of these averages are what they take into consideration when they rate the torque converter. Now, when you go out of the box like we did with this thing, where this car is just a hair above 2,000 pounds, and the motor makes like no bottom end power at all, that 3,500 RPM converter is not going to act like a 3,500 RPM converter. It's going to act like a regular stock, low stall converter. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but I got to say this, right? I hear it over and over again. There's no such thing as a stall converter. Stop using that phrase. There's no such thing as a stall converter. Stall is a measurement that's built into all or used in all converters. It's how high the converter will allow the engine to go before it makes basically a solid coupling and moves the car forward. So there's no such thing as a stall converter. There's high stall converters. There's converters that have different stall speeds, but there's no such thing as a stall converter. That's a public service announcement. Stop sounding like an idiot. Okay. So my solution was to put a stick in the car because nobody else is going to drive it. I'll drive it and we'll make it work. And we did a couple of test hits with it with the stick, and it really ran fine. It was, because I was able to bring it up to 4,000, 4,500, just gently swap feet, and the car would move fine. It worked good. But this time around, I don't plan on driving the car. I want to have other people take this thing out while I do other things. So it was essential to build it around an automatic. And that's how we ended up here. So John built the 904 for it, and then started hunting around for somebody to build us a converter. And then the lucky break. The universe works in strange ways. My friend Dallas introduces me to his friend Shane Polito. So Shane happens to be a torque converter engineer at TCI out in Memphis. Shane is also a Slant 6 freak. He's got a couple of them his own. And he's playing with all different ideas and so on and so forth. So when we get on the phone together and we compare notes, I tell him, yeah, the car did this, and this is what we're doing, this is what the came is. He's like, yeah. He says, I know exactly what you need. I can hook you up. I can build you a converter for that car. So one thing led to another, and let's do this, Shane. So he whipped this thing up, and it is a beautiful little piece. According to Shane, this thing should freewheel to around 4,000 RPM, meaning that with the lightest load against it, it'll allow the engine to flash up to that 4,000 RPM range, where it'll put this right in the meat of its power band, okay? He built it around a 9-inch shell instead of an 8. The smaller the diameter converter, the higher the stall speed you get, but also the more loss that you get, meaning that it'll slip on the top end, which is giving away the very few precious ponies that we have with this thing. So he built it around a 9-inch shell so there would be less slip. And by using a combination of vanes and all of the voodoo that goes on inside of a torque converter, and we're going to do a full video on inside torque converters. We're going to do a video with Shane all about that. The problem with the torque converter, in terms of like the hands-on guy like us, right, is that it's one of the few components in any hot rod that you really can't manipulate. You can't do anything with it. You can rebuild the engine, you can change cams, you can jet carburetors, you can, tune your AFI. There's all sorts of things you can do. You can build your transmission, you can put different gear sets in it. But the converter, no. The converter, you're stuck with what you got because it's a welded sealed unit. So it becomes a bit of voodoo. So if you've got an unorthodox combination like we've got here now, you need to be in direct communication with the person who's building your converter. They have to know exactly the specs that are going, you have to know exactly the operating circumstances that this thing is going to see. And luckily, Shane, because he's a Slant 6 guy, he knew exactly what we needed. So, and he feels that this is going to be close. He says he wouldn't be surprised if we're going to have to do some fine tuning inside of it. He says, make a few runs with the car, see what it's going to do, and then send it back to me if we need to tweak it any. So that's where we're at with that. But yeah, we're definitely going to get together with Shane and do some seriously intense torque converter stuff in the very near future. But my very near future is about putting all of these big pieces together, and that's where I'm going to be for the next couple of days. It's Thursday now. Tomorrow I've got to just clean, paint a couple of things, and then over the course of the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, all of this stuff is all going to go together. It's all going to go in the car, and we should be able to light this thing up Sunday. Weather permitting, you may even be able to take it out and do a couple of shorty sports with it. So I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a lot of fun. And that's it for now, and I'll see you tomorrow.